Well, it's Chords and Coffee coming to you from the PalenMusic.com warehouse. And today we have your friend and mine, Carl Verheyen. How you doing?
I love it. I'm good. How are you doing, Nate?
Man, I'm doing great. I am so stoked about this conversation that we're about to have.
Oh, man.
When you agreed to do this, first of all, I was like, dude, I can't believe this, because I've watched a ton of your instructional material. Been a fan of your work. So I'm just going to jump right into this. For those of you who might not know, Carl, is played with Supertramp, which is awesome. And also you have your own band, right?
Right. Yeah.
As well as, I'm just going to read this because you've kind of done it all.
That's true.
I can't wait to get into this because there's so many different ways that this interview can go, and I'm excited. But here's just a short list of what we got here that you've accomplished and what you've been involved with. So you've done a ton of recording work and been kind of a first call on the LA music scene as far as studio recording. You worked with the Bee Gees, Chad Wackerman, Dolly Parton, Stanley Clarke, just to name a few. Worked on some film soundtracks like The Crow, Usual Suspects, Ratatouille, Mission Impossible, Ghost Protocol, and TV shows like Cheers, Seinfeld, and Scrubs, along with teaching at MIT, or Musicians Institute, and then GIT, as well as, I think the first time I ran across your name was in Guitar for the Practicing Musician, a guitar player,
Wow.
one of those publications. So you've done a ton of playing out in the world, all over the world, as well as in the studio for albums, as well as for things like just movies and TV, but your own stuff, and then teaching other people. Carl, you've done it all.
Right, man. Well, I've been around a long time, and I started playing when I was 11. And when I knew exactly what I wanted to be when I grew up. I just had these cousins, these older cousins who had, this must have been like 64, 63. They had Beatles, pictures of the Beatles all over their rooms, the ceilings, the walls. And I walked into my cousin Dicey, we called her Dicey, her name was Diane. And I saw these George Harrison posters with a Rickenbacker 12-string and Gretsch guitars and stuff. And I go, I want to be that guy. And really, I never looked back, and I can't say I've really had any other job. I mean, I was a box boy at a market for the summer just to pay off this Les Paul I bought, because my dad said, you got to get a job, you got to make payments, so I think the payments were probably like $28 a month, but
when you say box boy, you mean like at a grocery store?
Yeah, at a grocery store where you're putting you're bagging a bag guy, you're taking people's groceries and put them in the bag, and here you go, ma'am.
Oh yeah, no, I love it. So Chords and Coffee family, if you're watching this and you have sacked groceries to pay for a guitar, comment below. I did that. My first guitar that I paid for with my own money, Gibson SG, sacking groceries at Baker's Big Star in Portageville, Missouri. Anyway, back to
I was the Safeway Market in Montrose, California, and I bought that Les Paul at the very first and at that time only Guitar Center. There was one. Wow. Yeah, so anyway, it's crazy.
So you were sacking groceries for a guitar, a Les Paul, making $28? Was that a
$28 was the payment, and I don't know what I made a week, but even then I was playing. Of course, I was playing gigs from when my parents had to drive me to them early on. So, and that is a cool thing to, I am very thankful for the fact that I've really never done any other kind of work than play guitar for a living. So that's I'm very fortunate, because I don't think there's a lot of people out there, And when you say I've done it all, yeah, man, I've done casuals meaning wedding receptions, bar mitzvahs, Christmas parties. I did those until I was about 29 years old. And, I did a lot of that as I was playing jazz in clubs and stuff like that. So I remember I didn't really own a real tuxedo. I owned the tux coat, maybe the pants with the stripes, but then I had a short sleeve shirt and a clip-on bow tie and these rubber shoes. And I remember showing up for one of these casuals at the Universal Hilton. And I had a piece of garbage pickup truck that I bought from my tax man, like this Nissan thing that was just junk, but at least it fit my Fender Twin in the back, right? And I pull up And the car in front of me, the guy gets out. It was a bright red Corvette, brand new, perfectly shiny. The guy gets out is Johnny Carson, and he's in Carson wear tux, right? He had his own clothing line, and it's just perfect. It's not wrinkled. He's just looking fabulous. Then they open the door, and this gorgeous blonde gets out. And at that moment, I look down and I go, "What am I doing with my life? I'm here to play. I probably have to load in through the kitchen, and I'm here to play this gig." And I just go, I've got to stop this. And about the same time, I met Larry Carlton in the recording studios. I met him in the studio scene, and he said, "You're never going to get any good work until you start turning down the bad work."
Ooh,
isn't that an interesting thing?
That is interesting. And, for everybody watching this, so we have a lot of folks, obviously this is a guitar-based audience. And so everybody watching this is excited to hear you speak and to teach us. And, there's a lot of folks that have picked up guitar maybe later in life, but there's a lot of guys that have, regardless of when they've started playing, guys and gals, regardless of when they've started playing, they have aspirations to figure out a way to, if not one income stream, to as many income streams as they can pour into their household through the 6 strings on a guitar.
Yeah, exactly. And let me back up for a second, because it wasn't that it was bad work. I don't mean bad work, because when you're playing, you're playing, so whether you're playing Celebrate Good Times, Come On, for a dance crowd at a wedding reception, whether you're doing that or playing in front of 180,000 people on a huge festival stage, it's all, you're playing. So that's good. I just had higher aspirations. I should put it that way. I just wanted my career to advance faster than it was. And so that was that. But today, in today's modern world, making a living playing music means multiple income streams. You really find that you've got publishing money coming in. You've got you can play live gigs I can play live shows with my own band and do tours. I can teach, I can do master classes, seminars, I can do online type stuff. I could also produce people, and I can be a member of Supertramp, which is somebody else's musical vision, studio musician, solo artist. There's just lots of income streams that combine to make a guy a good living.
Yeah. And I think it'd be really worth everybody's time if we just kind of went down this path a little bit, So with that being said, you started playing early and just stayed after it and stayed hungry, and all these doors of opportunity have opened. What would you say? And I know this is a kind of a big question in terms of it could go a lot of different ways, but what would you say is the key ingredient that you have that has allowed those doors of opportunity to be open for you, especially so many different types of doors? Because studio work and live work are completely different things. And then to put in your own creative, because you're creative, you write songs, you have not only a creative impulse, but you know what you're doing and you can explain it so well that you've taught millions of people. Those are all very different channels and you occupy all of them. What's the key ingredient to all of that that's allowed those doors to open? I
mean, that's a really good question. Obviously, when you say stay hungry, that's definitely what it was in my youth. But I was a rock and roll guy, right? As a kid, just wanted to play Rolling Stones tunes and Cream tunes and Hendrix tunes and Led Zeppelin and all that. And then Led Zeppelin was maybe a little bit later, but I remember being at a restaurant with my parents and we were walking out. I grew up in Pasadena. We were walking out of the restaurant and I see this guy singing and playing acoustic guitar. And I go, hey, I think I could do that. Anyway, I'll make it a really quick story because, it's just lame. But I asked the cocktail waitress, hey, how can I work here? And she goes, you'll have to audition for the manager. He's in tomorrow. I just showed up with my guitar the next morning at 10 and played a few pieces for him, solo guitar and vocal. And I was 17. And the guy goes, you're hired 2 nights a week, Sunday, Monday. And then he said, you are 18, aren't you? And I said, no. And he goes, come back when you're 18 and you'll have the gig, which was 3 months later. So then I kind of transitioned into singing and playing a little bit. Then one day this guy came in and said to me, he said, son, I like the way you play. He was an older dude. He goes, you want to get together and play sometime? This is a mind-opening thing that happened. I go, yeah, how about tomorrow? So I go there, and it was a crazy experience because he pulls out some music, and it's easier if I demonstrate. Hang on.
Let's go.
He goes, he pulls out some music, and the first chord was an F major 7, which I knew how to play. The second chord was D minor 7 flat 5, which I had never seen. So I said, well, this is D minor 7th, right, on the 5th fret. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is that it? And he goes, yeah, but you can play it like that. Of course, this is a richer voicing. You might want to use the open string. Sometimes people like the flat 5 on top. It's nice on the bottom. You can put the 7th on top or the bottom. This is probably my favorite voicing, but this is what a lot of people use. This is what they teach you in the chord books. This is a nice one too, but it's also an F minor 6. So anytime you have F minor 6, it's the same chord. Anyway, as a guy who'd never heard of that chord or seen that chord before, my brain exploded. So I really went down this path of, I got to learn how to play jazz. I need to learn how to blow over changes. I need to know what's going on when Herbie Hancock is playing, There Is No Greater Love and playing a blues scale over a B flat major 7th chord. I need to know all that stuff. So this is a long answer to your question, but I immersed myself in jazz for about 5 years, and I didn't look up. I practiced a lot. And I played only jazz gigs, only hollow body, Gibson 175 guitar. Forgot how to bend notes, forgot how to, play like Clapton, which was what I was so into. But I was driving in my car, and I know when it was 1980. I'm driving along in my car and just pumping through the radio stations, just pushing the buttons. And this amazing Joe Walsh solo came on the radio. And it was from a tune called Those Shoes by the Eagles. Check that one out, man. It's just such a killer rock guitar solo. And it hit me really hard. Like, wow, the state of rock guitar has come so far since I left off 5-6 years ago. And I had this epiphany, this realization that I need to learn everything I dig, because I got this classical player that I live with who's playing this gorgeous classical stuff. I should know that. And I really like Chet Atkins, and I really like Albert Lee, and I really like, Hank Garland. So I should get into this country stuff. And, Mike Bloomfield, man, he's killing me, and how about those Albert King licks I used to know? So at a certain point, right then, I just decided to be, if you dig it, you must learn it. I became that guy. And I started to really, really get into just spending time with Albert King for 3 or 4 days. And then I'm tired of those licks. I'm going to start listening to, Segovia or Chet Atkins or Duane Allman, and Wes Montgomery. I got that, but I want to keep it going, So that, I think, is the number one thing that young aspiring musicians, especially guitar players, they forget that you are much more hireable the more versatile you are.
Yeah.
So that's a way long answer to your question.
No, you answered that beautifully. And actually, you said something that just this sentiment kind of came up while you were talking. You were talking about, first of all, don't be so quick. And I'm saying this to myself as well as all, guitarists watching this. I feel like for whatever reason, especially in the realm of guitar, and maybe it's because so often the kind of gear that we like, from guitars to amps to pedals, starts to sort of inform a path of this. I am this kind of guitar player. You know what I mean? Like, even to a degree, I started playing, ES-175 gigs or like Gibson hollow body gigs. And I totally get that. And I 1000% am in alignment with you on that. But to your point, play what you dig, like the way that you said it. And in fact, I love how you unpacked it. You started really listening to these different guitar players. And one thing that I've challenged myself to do more is to consider what my musical diet is, because I think a lot of times I don't listen to things that I should listen that would help my development, because I just sort of get used to listening to the same old stuff I've always listened to.
The stuff that makes you happy. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And that goes for practicing too. I met this guy and he goes, "Man, I've been playing for 30 years, but I just don't play that well." And I go, "Well, what do you practice?" And he goes, "Well, I come home from work each day, pick up my guitar and play Hotel California." And I go, "Well, I bet you're really good at that, but you've got to challenge yourself. You've got to go, well, what am I not good at and what do I need to know?" A lot of my practicing nowadays is set list oriented. Like, what's the next time I'm going to go play somewhere, and how can I just own it? Know everything, all the lyrics I sing, all the pedals I push. Even though that changes, but just how I'm going to tackle each one of these tunes and be masterful at it and not suck.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you hit the nail on the head. And first of all, I don't want to gloss over this. The first of many nuggets of this conversation, I want to make sure everybody catches this, is that, it's okay to play what makes you happy, but that's not practice. And we've talked about that before, but what's a little bit of a revelation, it's also okay to listen to what makes you happy, but that listening is not advancing your musicality. Am I saying that right?
You are, yeah. And it's difficult nowadays to seek out acceptable listening. You have to ask your friends, "What have you been listening to?" And they might tell you, and you go, "Wow, that's really cool. I got to get into this guy or these people." So
right. That's why you and I are here today, because I'm going to ask you that question here in a minute.
Cool.
Right?
Cool.
So, as part of your current practice routine, are you like set up in the way that you would be set up live, where you've got like your pedals and everything set up and you're doing the tap dance and really honing the choreography of that, as well as
not at all. No.
Okay.
I have a little tiny studio here, and there's two blackface Fender Princetons, and I own about 70 guitars. So nice. There used to be a lot in cartage, right? But now there's 3 trunks out in the garage, and there's a couple of closets that hold 20 more, 25 more each. So I've set up, I honestly believe that practicing, so there's 2 kinds. One kind of practice is what's the next gig, right? I have an acoustic gig coming up, so I'm really working on those chops and trying to remember all those silly lyrics and, everything like that. But another way I practice is I try to practice both distorted and clean, acoustic and electric. I practice clean a lot. If I play a Strat through a Fender Princeton, a blackface Princeton reverb, to me, that's ground zero electric guitar. Distortion, delay, chorusing, reverb, all that stuff is above that, on top of that. But ground zero electric guitar, where I can really hear what my hands are doing, Fender Princeton reverb. And so that's how I practice. And I have another way of practice, and you may have heard about it from other interviews you've read with me, but they're using my lick book. You want me to explain that, or
talk about that?
Are people tired of that?
No, go for it.
Let's see. I got one here, I think. Oh, here it is. So I keep for the last since the 70s, I've been keeping a musical diary, and that is basically, as I practice and I come across something that's useful, something that's interesting, something that sounds like me, I write it down, and I write it down with notes, because dealing with notes on the written page makes it so much easier to communicate with non-guitarists. I don't bother with anything related remotely to tab. I'm not a tab guy. Tab is for amateurs.
Ooh, all right.
There's a nugget. So now, if you if you look at this top one, it says G7. Over it are the positions, and under it are the fingers I used. So, you know, the positions says starts in 3, then goes to 4. So you really, there's only one place on the guitar to do that. Same with this. And if the fingers are written, that's for F minor 7th. The third one's F sharp minor. The fourth one is A minor. So there's 4 or 5 licks on that page that may or may not have gotten under my hand. But I've got about 25 of these lick books at least, you know, and then, yeah.
So every time you're practicing and playing, and is this like when something comes out of you and you're like, hey, that's pretty cool, and you go grab your lick book and write it down?
That's a good way to put it. It's like you're playing along and you go, yeah, that sounds like Hendrix. Cool. Yeah, that sounds like something that Steve Lukather showed me. Yeah, that sounds like Clapton. Yeah, I've been playing that for many years. Wow, what was that? That sounds different. That sounds like me. And then I write it down and I finger it and I work it into other keys, and it becomes part of my musical vocabulary, right? It all started when I read this Contemporary Keyboard magazine article by Chick Corea, and it was in the 70s. And he said, the best of us are only truly improvising 30% of the time. The rest of the time we're stringing together. The other 70%, we're stringing together ideas we've got worked out and lines we've got worked out. So I went, man, it's all about lines, you know? You don't want to be a guy that sounds like you want melody, right? So what is melodic to you? And for me, it's just bigger intervals than half steps and whole steps. You know, when you start getting into thirds, fourths, fifths, sixths, that's when things get melodic to me.
So I hear what you're saying. Maybe could you grab your electric guitar and show us like what you mean regarding the difference between lines or phrases or melodic passages, and then just, you know, your typical kind of scale shredding kind of thing. And not that they're bad, you know, one's good, one's bad, but definitely, you know, there's a preference there. And I'm with you. You know, the melodic stuff is memorable. You can sing it. Right.
Well, the thing about your improvising and the way you want music to sound, it has to do with your own concept of melody. And obviously, I'll just back up and give you a quick little overview of how I get to where I'm getting. You start with your scales, right? Major, minor, dominant, and then it's really important to say, get your scales horizontal. So if I'm playing my electric guitar in the key of F minor, and I'll call it F Dorian, right? I've got it, so I've got it like that, right? So then I've got that range going, and that means that I can work it into any style, whether it's rock or blues or jazz. I can work that into any style that I play. But getting back to the lick book, as I'm improvising, it might be like I got a little shuffle groove. What was that? That's just something cool that I've never played. So I might say, man, I'm going to write that down. It starts on the minor third, then goes to the root, then another minor third. So there's a sixth. Really cool. Then a minor third, then up a fifth to this E flat, and then up to the top, up to the root. Now it's important that I learn it in A minor. D minor. anyway, it's important that I work it into all my other keys and write it down and finger it. So that's a huge part of my practicing right there. And I try to get into that once a week, kind of a free style of improvising, and see where it takes me and see if I can come up with any new material. And if only 10 or 20% of these new ideas, these new lines get under your hands, you're still improving. You're still getting better all the time. So that's, yeah, practicing is a trippy thing because you can waste a whole lot of time if you're not careful.
Well, for sure. And also, you know, we have a lot of folks that watch this show that have gotten started, maybe they've got, wife and kids at home, or maybe, they're, and a parent who's, working 50, 60 hours a week coming in, and they're trying to find time to practice, or just later in life, and I always say that the best time to start playing guitar is right now. Right. Because it's changed my life. And also guitar is one of those instruments that it just invites community. And
you said it. That's really true.
And the truth is that practice is a pressure, or not a pressure point, but just a pain point, because finding the time. And in my own life, if I'm being totally transparent, I've just had to learn what to say no to. And some of it is like, think about how much time we spend on this thing,
Oh, I know. Step away from the cell phone.
Exactly. And then also how much time we spend just looking at a screen, unless it's Chords and Coffee, and that's time well spent.
That's true. Very true.
But that being said, do you think that it's safe to say that, any kind of journal, and, back to the phone thing, even though this can be kind of a trap, it's also an incredible tool. I mean, for myself, when I have an idea, I will record it in my voice memo, or sometimes I'll just record it on a video so that I can look back. Because I'll be honest with you, Carl, if you put, I am a living example. They say, how do you get a guitar player to shut up, put a piece of sheet music in front of them?
Yeah, right.
Right. Like, you throw a chord chart in front of me and I'm confident, I mean, it didn't. And I get it. You're looking at stuff that would probably, give me like a cranial hematoma or something like that. But that being said,
whatever that is.
Yeah, I don't know. I just made it up. That's another benefit of the show. But anyway, you're looking at stuff that's advanced, But, when you were talking about that, I was with you on, your modes and, all the D minor 7 flat 5 stuff and everything you're discussing. But the truth is, and just a moment of vulnerability here, like, I could not write out the licks that I play in standard notation. And so I'm convicted when you say that, but I'm also encouraged to know that as great of a player as you are and all the different things that you do, you are still pushing yourself through practice and keeping a journal of things that like, hey, what is that? That's cool. Can I do that again? Oh, maybe not.
Right,
maybe,
exactly.
That's awesome.
Well, I mean, there's so many guitar players that just don't really have any need to read music. And I get that. They don't do gigs where reading music is important. I was in a different situation where I was playing all these little club gigs and stuff, and then I started getting some calls for recording sessions in the LA area, and like a TV show or a movie date or even a jingle, those kind of things. It's only record dates where you find chord charts. But some record dates are record dates with notes written out. They want you to play this opening lick, and in live TV, there'll be some guest artist on, and you're supposed to play what's on this record, and it's written out. So for me, I was one time I was at the Musicians Union, and you had to go there back in the day to pick up your checks for work. And I ran into a good friend of mine, a guy named Gordon Goodwin. And he's actually really famous in the big band world right now. I mean, he's got an incredible big band, and all the colleges all over the country play his charts. And I'm on the first 3 of his records. I got Grammy nominated for one of them. But anyway, Gordon's in the parking lot, and he goes, "Hey, Carl, I want you to hear this from me." He goes, "I got a huge session on Wednesday. It's a double, meaning like 10 to 1 and 2 to 5. And I didn't call you because there's a lot of music to read, and although I like your tone better, your rhythm vibe better, your your chops, your feel better, your ideas. This other guy reads better than you. And that kicked my ass. I was so pissed. So at the time, I was trading classical guitar lessons. I was learning classical from a guy that I taught him how to play the blues, right? Or play, electric guitar. We were trading lessons. So I went to him and I go, man, I just got so hosed by not being a good reader because, it was probably a $1,200 day. And in those days, man, that was a lot of money for a 27-year-old or 28-year-old or whatever. So I said, I wish there was a class we could take somewhere. And he said, why don't we just start our own class? And I go, what do you mean? He goes, let's go down to this music store and we'll each buy a stack of music about that tall. We'll put a limit on it of $75 each. And he just had this whole plan. He goes, we'll buy flute books, clarinet books, trumpet books. We'll buy saxophone books. We'll buy jazz duets, classical duets, clarinet duets, and we'll just sight read them. We'll just learn how to read. And the only other two requirements were a coffee pot and a metronome. And we just did my house, his house, my house, his house. And we did that for about 6 months, and it just cracked it open for us. We just learned how to read together. And all of a sudden, I got much more work because, I think that, playing on people's demos and all that kind of stuff, that's this level, right? But if you're doing what I would call the union sessions, like TV jingles and all that, you're doing a lot better, higher quality work that will pay you down the road because of the residuals and royalties and stuff. So learning how to read for me was a good thing. Now, it might not be necessary for you because there isn't that kind of work where you are,
But
So don't kill yourself.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. But something that really struck me, what you said, is the reason, Carl, you are such an incredible teacher is you are an incredible student.
Oh man, thank
you. And you had the humility and the wherewithal to say, rather than being like, well, I'm just not going to do that because that's not who I am. You said, no, I need that. And I get the financial, catalyst for that.
Yeah.
But
that was a part of it. But, like I went and saw Herbie Hancock not too long ago at the Hollywood Bowl. And he plays a song called Actual Proof.
Oh, yeah.
It's one of the hardest songs ever.
Yes, it is.
I got backstage and I said, Herbie, I just have one question. Mm-hmm. Is Actual Proof all in 4/4, or is there a bar of 3 and a bar of 5? And he goes, it's all in 4. And I went, no, because I've been listening to it forever, 40 years, and I never understood what was going on with those guys. Check it out, people. It's on an album called Thrust.
Yes.
Actual Proof. And it's so hard.
I have a quick funny story about Actual Proof.
Great.
So I am the oldest of 3 boys. I play guitar. My middle brother, Josh, who is an incredible musician, he actually reads the best out of all of us. He plays drums. And then my youngest brother, John, plays bass. And so we had a band. Mm-hmm. And there was a time in my life where I had great aspirations to be like a jazz fusion player, huge Scofield fan. And I still love John Scofield.
Yeah.
And
me too.
And we were listening to Chick Corea. And so we had got a gig. And a buddy of mine who plays keys said, hey, I got us this gig, and it's for a bunch of college professors. We were living in Columbia, Missouri. MU is there. And he says, they want us to play some jazz. And we were like, oh, okay. And so we worked up all these instrumental arrangements of like Steely Dan, Asia. I had Jeff Beck, Cause We've Ended as Lovers, because I really pushed for that one. And then Actual Proof was another one that we had worked up. And I'm trying to play that flute melody in time, like with the record. Yeah. And all that stuff,
Well, when I heard Herbie tell me that, I went home and copied out a chart in 4, and then I've done a lot of sessions with Vinnie Caliuta, the drummer, and he'd been playing with Herbie that night, and he blew on it. So they made all those hits with Vinny playing a drum solo with amidst all the hits. It was so incredible. So I decided, yeah, I'm just going to do a deep dive into this tune, and I'm going to play it every day for a week or two. And I got it. I was so, but that's what you have to do. You have to say, what do I suck at? How can I challenge myself to be a better musician? Even though I'll never play Actual Proof live, probably it sure won't happen in my band. Same with Giant Steps. I try to play through Giant Steps every week just to keep my brain sharp.
Yeah, actually, Isaiah Sharkey does a killer guitar part with Chris Dave playing Actual Proof. Chris Dave and the drum heads.
Oh wow!
But
I'll check it.
Wrap up that story, what's funny is we put we were like, I was playing on the absolute edge and beyond my ability, meaning like I was hanging on for dear life, and I did not own the tunes that I was playing. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And anyway, long story short, we get there and we're like all just like sweating this really hard. And then we realize, wait a minute, this is a pool party. Yeah. And they just want us to play Keep Your Hands to Yourself by Georgia Satellites.
Yeah. So did you play any jazz there, or was it more
No, we started playing that, and somebody came over and was like, "Can you guys play something we like?"
Oh, God, that's funny. I've been playing with Stuart Copeland lately, the drummer from the Police. Right?
Oh yeah,
he's got this really hip thing called Police Deranged for Orchestra, where we go, me on guitar, Armand Sabuleka on bass, who's just amazing, and Stuart, right, and and three singers and a symphony orchestra. And he said a really great comment the other day. He goes, "Yeah, I don't really like jazz unless I'm playing it."
That is hilarious. Yeah,
pretty funny.
No, that's awesome. Well, I want to be sensitive to your time too, but there's a couple of important questions, and we kind of touched on this. Just for a quick recap, we've talked so much about practice and important, and I didn't have like necessarily a path that I wanted this interview to go down. I just wanted to start talking to you, and I really feel like the huge takeaway is that you've been playing for most of your life.
Yeah, almost all my life, right?
You've developed a practice regimen while staying hungry and humble. And that has opened doors for you, but also you're still practicing. You're a fantastic player. I mean, I think a lot of people with your chops would probably, kind of throttle back a little bit, but here you are, you've got 25 lick book, which are diaries of your practice.
Yeah, at least. Yeah. There's a pretty big stack over there.
Yeah.
But, well, that I think it's just a lifelong quest, like your tone, Your tone is a lifelong quest. If there's a way, and you have to value your music enough to say, if there's a better, within budget, of course, if there's a better way to do it, I want to do it. If there's a better way to get that sound that I want to get, that makes it really fun and comfortable to play, and yet, doesn't mush out and sounds like me. That's a key thing too, so.
Boy, howdy. And you said you had 70 guitars, 70 guitars?
Yeah, but that counts banjos, mandolins, dobros, ukuleles, so 70 instruments. But yeah, it's probably 63 guitars or so. But, I don't sell stuff. That's my problem.
No, I get it. I mean, it's like, and we kind of, whenever we were getting set up, I kind of mentioned this to you. Every time I get a new guitar or any new piece of gear, I always feel like this is a new sword for a new quest.
Right on. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Whether it's like, a new musical venture, or maybe I'm playing with some folks that I'm just getting started with. And I also, I think about like, I'm not the last person that's going to have this guitar. Someone is going to end up with. So I'm really, this guitar is part of my story, but I'm a part of it and whoever plays it after me. Right.
That's a beautiful way to look at it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so as someone who owns not just a bunch of guitars, but you've got some nice vintage instruments.
Yeah.
I would be remiss if I forgot about our mutual friends at LSL if I didn't mention them. And, I've really come to love that company. And I'm just curious, just from your standpoint, especially somebody that has all these different instruments to choose, what is it about your LSL Satakoy that is different or
Yeah.
special
Yeah, the
versus,
CV special.
yeah.
This is the very first one here. And I mean, what happened to me was LSL called and they say, "You're a Strat guy. We want to start making Strats." And I said, "Well, the only way I would be involved is if you make me a signature model, put my name on it," which they decided to do, which they agreed. So the Satakoi is one thing, and it's great. Mine is got a little different. It's got the way I set things up, and it's kind of a little, I would say it's a step, it's a higher quality instrument, higher quality in that I have it can't be too heavy, you know. The wang bar has to be set up like I do, the tone knobs, the action height, the neck, you know, all that stuff. So I have 3 of those, and then I have 2 of their tellies. This thing called a Soledad, and then a regular telly. And I love those guys. They're, you know, eventually you say, hey, do I want to take a Seafoam Green 61 Strat that I insure for 35 grand? Do I want to take that on the road? Not really, but I want to take something that sounds as good and that, you know, I can get another one if I need it, you know, so.
That makes a world of sense. Well,
Yeah.
so right now, not to switch gears on you, but before, you know, I forget, right now somebody's watching this and they're started playing guitar and they're new at it and they're finding time to pursue it. And maybe they're at that point where they either feel like they're in a rut or maybe they're just getting started and it just feels like, gosh, there's just so much I don't know. How would you encourage that person to keep going and to keep pursuing it and to keep playing?
That's a great question because I feel there's so much I don't know. You know, there's, you know, I feel, okay, I can play, but there are times when I just go, God, I am so damn average. You know, I'm just average. What's going on? I need to have something special going on. And so that desire to keep getting better, I would say to that person, the joy, you know, realize the joy you have of making music with your own hands. If you can internalize that, it makes you want to keep doing it and get better at it, I think, you know. So that would be it's kind of like, okay, I've come this far, but I can do better if I do this, this, and this. You know, I would say that might be the best advice I can get. And learn everything you dig, you know.
Yeah.
And, you know, like I tried to teach this kid a while back on Skype. He was in Tennessee, and all he cared about was metal, you know. And I remember teaching at USC. No, it wasn't USC. It was probably at Musicians Institute. And I was showing people how to do those, you know, it was a class, interesting class called, you know, Advanced Electric Guitar in the Style of Carl Verheyen. I was teaching people how to do that.
Lenny Bro thing.
You know, those kind of harmonics, right?
Like that Lenny Bro thing.
Yeah, the Lenny Bro thing. This
Yeah,
kid
yeah.
raises his hand and he goes, why do I need to learn that? All I want to do is play like Slash. And I said, well, I'll tell you, I've played with Slash. He's fine. He's good. He's a rock star. But you can learn to play like Slash in your bedroom. You don't really need to be here, you know. And at that point, I go, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore because these guys are not getting it, what I'm trying to lay on them. Because my class was more about, I want to teach you how to make a living and the things you need to know to make a living, you know. So, and there's kids who just want to be rock stars. So, anyway, but that's not where you should start off. You know, I want to be a rock star. It's not going to happen. You know, so anyway.
Yeah, you got to learn. What I found is learning to love the sound of my voice on the guitar,
Yeah,
and then seeing myself in my best possible light in the future, even though I'm not there yet. And that becomes motivation to keep practicing and to keep going forward.
That's such a great way to look at it. You know, like
Thank
just
you.
if you can hear in your mind what you want to sound like, that can be a life goal right there. I want to sound like this. I want to, you know, I want to have this singing, sustaining tone that does not mush out on the low strings and that is not staccato, 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 and I don't want that high end sizzle, and I don't want any kind of scratchiness in my sound. And you know, you're aiming for that with gear and with touch and with, you know, just concept. Those are the kind of things that I think about.
I love it. I mean, you've given us so many great nuggets, you know, and I really, really am so grateful for the time that you've spent. And before we wrap up, you know, this time of year, this is a great time to express gratitude. And I think it's really powerful for all of us to hear gratitude coming out with our own voice towards other people, because express gratitude. I mean, there's just something, I mean, it's nothing less than supernatural. It's a good thing. So, Carl, who would you, you know, maybe somebody's watching this and they know you and they love you, or maybe there's somebody that has gone on, you know, and you just want to, you know, shine a light on their memory. Who, when I say express gratitude towards somebody, who is that pops in your mind, and who would you just express some gratitude?
That's a great one. I could think about it for an hour and have a giant list, right?
Sure.
But I would say that, you know, it was amazing that my mom drove me to guitar lessons at age 11. That was pretty amazing. And 11 and 12, just, you know, kids are going to baseball practice, kids are going to dance and all that stuff. And my mom religiously drove me up there. And that's one thing. My dad was really important to me because he just gave me this massive nugget. He goes, whatever you do, make sure it makes you happy. Make sure, in other words, what you're going to do for a living when you grow up, just make sure it makes you happy. Because he was a big businessman and had his own company and all that. And he worked his butt off, but he didn't really say you need to come into the family business, you know, which was cleaning, industrial cleaning and packaging of aerospace stuff, right?
Oh, wow.
You know, so like some of the stuff he's touched is on the moon, right? So that those two influences. And then as I got to play professionally and stuff, a lot of the early drummers I played with, John Ferraro, he at the time had a gig with Larry Carlton, and he worked with George Benson and all these people. And he would say, yeah, that's cool, but it's not what Larry would do. Larry would do it this way and just give me a slightly hipper rhythm to play. And then Chad Wackerman, John and Chad have been on many of my records. Chad, I've been on a few of his records too. And he, you know, he was working with Frank Zappa and Alan Holdsworth, and now he plays with James Taylor. And he would just say, you know, there's a hipper way to do that, you know, and he helped me with odd times and things like that. And then when I joined Supertramp, you know, I auditioned for those guys at age 29, and I didn't really know anything about their music. You know, I really wasn't a fan at the time. And so I show up at the audition, and one of my heroes, Buzzy Featon, was walking out. And, you know, so I show up and, hey, Buzz, oh boy, here we go. So I got in there and I go, guys, I have to, you know, it was 10 in the morning too. It was really early. Buzzy had been the 9:30 guy or the 9 o'clock guy. And I said, I got to apologize. I don't know any of your music. And they go, and Rick Davies, who's the leader of the band, he goes, we don't want to play any of our bloody music. Let's play the blues. So we played the blues, and they had me sing and they had me blow and stuff. And so that was how I got in the band initially as a sideman. Then they made me a full-time member in like 1996. But I realized over the years the deep musical vision that Rick had. Rick Davies, he's the keyboard guy and singer. And, you know, it wasn't stuff he told me as much as followed by example. Like the show at Madison Square Garden was the same show as Moncton, New Brunswick. You know what I mean? Just some backwoods hockey stadium we were playing. So that's pretty heavy. And I'll make this really quick because I don't want to take up too much of your time. But I was a gigantic Youngbloods fan as a kid. I loved this guy, Jesse Colin Young. And when he left the Youngbloods, you're hip to that band? They had some hits like Get Together, you know.
Not as hip as I should be, but go on.
Well, you know, back it was like the summer of love. I was a kid. You were maybe even not born, but they had this hit, Get Together, right? And the chorus is like, come on, people now.
Oh yeah.
Follow your brother,
Sure.
everybody get together. So
Yeah, I know that. Yeah.
So that's Jesse Cullen Young, right? So
Okay.
he leaves that band and starts his own band, and his own band was killer. And the guy just has an amazing voice. So at age 19, I wrote him a letter saying, "Dear Jesse, I know all the Youngbloods music. I play it in bands, and I know a whole lot of your new music that you're coming up. Is there any chance I could join your band? How can I join your band?" Guess what? He wrote me back a postcard.
Wow.
And he basically says, I just hired a saxophone player, and I prefer to play all the guitar myself. So you won't believe this. There's a movie coming out about his life, and we went to the Grammy Museum Wednesday night to see it. We got invited to it. And yesterday, at this recording studio nearby called Rock Cellar, they were doing an interview with him, and I was a VIP guest that got to be there. So I showed up, and I said, "Is there going to be any Q&A?" And they go, "Yeah, you have a question?" So I go, "Jesse." And I told them the whole story about being in high school, knowing all his tunes, and then graduating, and I'm 19, and I showed him the postcard. And anyway, I have to just sit back for a second and go, he was a really big influence, besides Clapton and Jeff Beck and Jimi Hendrix and Duane Allman and Wes Montgomery, all those things. I'd never met him, but what a big influence. So if he watches this, I patterned my vocals after him, songwriting, all this stuff. So as a kid, as a teenager and stuff. So
that is awesome.
Wild? I finally meet him 50 years later, because I was 73 when I wrote him.
That is an amazing story. And first of all, I love how humble you are, and it's inspiring, because in all of those things, to humble yourself to, what, and also there's a little bit of just, audaciousness where you're like, I'm writing him a letter, right?
I'm writing him.
Right. And you did it, but also, you had to be willing to risk the fear of rejection, and you were, and that requires humility.
Well, we all get rejected in different times, sure. And so you eventually, though, I got to tell your listeners that experience is the best, because you start off going, God, I hope I can cut this. I hope I can cut this. And then you show up, eventually you start showing up a session, and you have to get the mentality of, wait a minute, I am the expert in this room. I've got the 10, 20,000 hours in on the guitar. I'm the expert. So they write you a chord that's unplayable. You don't have 7 strings or 7 fingers. And you just go, this is cool, but let me show you what a guitar player would do, It would be like this, and you get the expertise of just a lot of experience. And I remember showing up at a session, and they go, "We need you to sound like ZZ Top." And I go, "Okay. That's Billy Gibbons. He plays a Les Paul, probably through a little tweed champ or something like that. He's got the Texas shuffle, which feels different than the Chicago shuffle. He plays a lot of those pinch harmonics, not a lot of fast chops." Got it. Why? Because we're huge fans of music, right? We're huge fans of ZZ Top and every other kind of cool band. So that to me, just the experience just gives you the confidence, and so if they reject you, you just go, well, that's their damn loss.
That's right. You keep soldiering on.
Right on. Exactly.
But I tell you what, Carl, thank you.
Oh, man. Thank
You've
you.
been so generous with your time. I love the stories. I love the knowledge that you shared. And I got to tell you something. I don't know if you heard about it or not, but the folks that watch Chords and Coffee are the most encouraging guitar players in the universe.
Oh, great.
And so I appreciate you taking the time to not only be a part of this, but I would love it to have you again. I'd love to hear more of these stories, because I know you've got a lot of them. And thanks again. You're awesome for doing that. We do this every Saturday at 9 a.m. on YouTube, and we will see you again next week for another Chords and Coffee.
All right. See you, everybody.